an Indian delegation led by our chief negotiator, Rajesh Agrawal, is headed next week to Washington to discuss the tariff negotiations and the bilateral trade agreement with the U.S. side led by U.S. Assistant Trade Representative Brendan Lynch. You may look at an early harvest agreement with the U.S. because the two sides are closing in and very fast. This is going to be the second round of talks, of detailed negotiations between the two sides to come up on the same page on big ticket items and then flow down to the specifics. There would be obviously an early visit of US President Donald Trump, possibly for the Quad Summit in September,
right,
or maybe earlier, where the two leaders can meet.
All of a sudden, there's a lot of activity between India and US. An Indian delegation is soon going to the US. On the other hand, JD Vance, the American Vice President, will soon be coming to India as well. To talk about, what is the reason behind this hectic activity between India and US, I'm joined by my senior colleague, Mr. Shishir Gupta, Executive Editor, Hindustan Times. Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time. What are some of the reasons behind this, increase in activity between India and US?
See, there are two parts to it. One is that an Indian delegation led by our chief negotiator, Rajesh Agrawal, is headed next week to Washington to discuss the tariff negotiations and the bilateral trade agreement with the US side led by US Assistant Trade Representative Brendan Lynch. Right. Brendan Lynch was in town for the first round last month. Now, the two are going to further close the trade agreement. My understanding is that the word that is used is they will scope the agreement in the sense that they will come to terms, they'll have a broad agreement on big picture items, and from there they will flow down to the specifics.
Sure.
So this is what is going to happen, and you may look at an early harvest agreement with the US because the two sides are closing in and very fast. Right. The South Korean president recently said that US President Donald Trump has put all the horses on having a trade agreement with South Korea, Japan, and India. So this is going to be the second round of talks, of detailed negotiations between the two sides to come up on the same page on big ticket items and then flow down to the specifics. And my understanding is that this is achievable and the two sides are committed to it. So you're looking at an early agreement rather than waiting till autumn of
right.
this year to come. Second thing is the visit of Vice President JD Vance along with his wife and children. Now, this is a visit of a Vice President of United States, and the two sides will be talking to each other, that is Vice President JD Vance and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who two already have a certain amount of personal bonding when they met previously when Prime Minister was there in Washington.
Right.
Lady Vance is also going to go to Agra and Jaipur, and the two will obviously he's coming to India for the first time. But the bigger thing is that this is also one way to actually intensify the engagement between India and US. And this will, from here, there would be obviously an early visit of US President Donald Trump, possibly for the Quad Summit in September,
right,
or maybe earlier, where the two leaders can meet.
So this is just the beginning of, the next set of steps. Of course, on one hand, we are talking about the bilateral trade agreement and perhaps its early conclusion, because the goal, of course, is to do it by the autumn this year. And then, of course, as you're saying, the Quad Summit and President Trump and Prime Minister Modi meeting again.
See, the U.S. National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, was also supposed to come in, but then he got into hot waters when the Yemen attack was leaked to the media.
Right.
So I think he's doing more firefighting in Washington. So he could not make it. But the Indian National Security Advisor and the U.S. National Security Advisor are constantly in touch with each other on the hotline, just like the Indian Foreign Minister and his U.S. counterpart are in touch with each other. Recently, I think possibly a week ago, the Indian Commerce and Industry Minister, Piyush Goyal, spoke to his U.S. counterpart. So things are moving at a very rapid pace with the commitment to have an early trade deal. Now, this has also translated into European Union looking for an early harvest agreement with India, and UK also closing in to a free trade agreement with India. So three things are combining, and my sense is that the first one off the block is going to be the Indo-US bilateral trade deal.
Right. So a lot of activity up ahead. And of course, we will talk about, some of those things as and when they happen, including, of course, about the Vice President's visit to India. But today, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.